Good evening.
Senator Dennis, thank you for saving us for prime time. I'm Chris Daly. I'm Deputy Director of Government Relations for the Nevada State Education Association. I think, as everyone knows now, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. Allow me to make a quick observation as someone who regularly attends public hearings. Tonight's public comment had the feel of a school board meeting. The public comment at your average, regular school board meeting in 2022. And I think that fact may be the most instructive thing that we learn tonight. The most pressing issues facing Nevada schools, including the severe educator shortage dominating the headlines, the chronic underfunding of education, violence in our schools, and continuing inequities for disadvantaged students, are very clearly not the result of any school district governance model. No. These issues instead are the result of larger societal problems and the continuing failure of state leadership to truly prioritize public education. Appointing school board members will not address these issues. School board members are on the front line of elected officials. You got a taste of it this evening, but they are regularly subjected to the kind of public comment that we heard earlier tonight, and many school board members have had their safety threatened. After resigning from the Washoe County School Board, former trustee Kurt Thigpen wrote this, I believe it was in Reno today, quote, "I had many conversations with district staff about safety that reminded me of preparing for active shooter drills. At every school board meeting since, the threat level only got higher, school police presence got higher, and the vitriol, hate, harassment, and intimidation and abuse by some members of the public only got worse as time went on." End quote. Appointing school board members will do nothing to improve that dynamic. School boards are responsible for school district governance, yet they are denied the resources necessary to be successful. Everyone in this room knows Nevada is 48th. I think I'm the 7th person to say it tonight. We're 48th in the nation in per pupil funding, and that is not the fault of school board members. For them, it's a setup. Run this school district or govern this school district, but you don't get the money to do it. It's a setup. Appointing school members, by the way, will not mean more education funding. We also need to be honest about the politics driving the discussion of school district governance. While there have been numerous efforts over the years to raise the issue, it never got this far. Not until my colleague, Lisa Guzman, was elected to the Clark County School Board in 2020. Even though Lisa is a great school board member, I follow lots of elected officials, she's a great one. Apparently her work is such a threat that one entity filed a complaint against her before she even took office. When that didn't work, they decided that they would go after the system of electing school board members. Former Speaker Frierson told me personally, it was one-on-one, but he told me the only reason he introduced his hybrid school bill, the only reason that he included the language in the mining tax deal, which led to this process, was because the Clark County Education Association demanded that it be in there. So we're here. And tonight, we hear about a new coalition advocating a hybrid school board model that looks a lot like those same old corporate-backed education reform efforts that we saw in the 90s and the aughts, reforms that have resoundingly failed to improve overall education quality. However, hearing during public comment and messaging some of my friends, apparently at least 2 of the 7 listed coalition members have stated they don't have a position on elected versus appointed or hybrid school boards. Let me put it another way. More than a quarter of the coalition that you just heard from advocating hybrid school boards don't support hybrid school boards. Meanwhile, there's no evidence that appointed school boards or hybrid school boards improve education quality or student outcomes. And none was presented in the May hearing, and none this evening. With that said, NSEA does appreciate this opportunity to continue our engagement in the conversation about school board composition. We believe Nevada can improve the professionalism, collaboration, accountability, and responsiveness of school boards, adding educator voice, which is sorely missing, while also preserving school boards as democratically elected bodies. I'd like now to turn this over to NSEA President Dawn Echeverry, who has the unique perspective as a former president of the Nevada PTA, former member of the Story County School District Board of Trustees, former member of the Nevada State Board of Education, and 28-year elementary music teacher. Dawn?
Good evening. My name is Dawn Echeverry, and I'm the president of the Nevada State Education Association. NSEA is part of a long tradition of educators promoting the democratic process. Educators with the National Education Association have played a key role supporting voting rights, from past NEA President Shar Armand Williams' effort to get Tennessee to ratify the 19th Amendment in 1920, to students affiliated with the California Teachers Association who started a campaign to extend the vote to the 18-year-olds back in 1967. We believe participating in the cornerstone of democracy and locally elected school boards represent the American institute that comes closest to the ideals of local self-governance. Local school boards are in place to ensure that schools in each community reflect the values of the people. School boards provide direction and oversight for the superintendent who manages the day-to-day operations of the schools. They set policies for the district and approve budgets. They also provide direct accountability to the community. One of NSEA's recommendations related to the school district governance is to end the ban on participation by active educators. As a classroom teacher in Washoe County, I was able to participate in a school governance because I lived in a different county at the time. But my experience in the classroom directly informed my actions and made me a more committed, professional, and knowledgeable trustee. As an educator serving as a trustee, I was able to articulate students' needs when it came to budgeting and decision-making. For an example, education programs are brought before boards as a budgetary item. They are presented to us with big bows and the fix-all. But as an educator, I was able to ask questions about implementation. And what I found is most programs affected the cost of the district for more money for extra staffing and took away from what the state-mandated curriculum was already being taught in our classrooms, making it harder for our teachers to implement and for meeting the children's needs. Allowing active educators to serve in school district governance will improve school boards in Nevada. During this hearing and some of the former hearings, some have alluded to the governance model at the State Board of Education. However, the roles and responsibilities of the State Board are vastly different from the local school boards. The State Board is not responsible for running the Department of Education. The State Board is not in charge of multi-million dollars or less multi-billion-dollar budgets. The State Board is in charge of adopting plans and improving the quality of public education in Nevada. While there has been some improvements, Nevada schools are still consistently ranked near last. As a former State Board education member, I was involved in the interview and recommendation to the governor for the hiring of the state superintendent, who the state board has no oversight of or the ability to hold accountable when procedures are not followed. I would like to introduce to you Lisa Guzman. Lisa is the Assistant Executive Director for the Nevada State Education Association, and she is also an elected trustee in Clark County.
Chair Dennis, members of the committee, my name is Lisa Guzman, and I am the Assistant Executive Director for the Nevada State Education Association. Full disclosure, I am also the trustee for District A in the Clark County School District. I am not representing the Clark County School District at all during these proceedings. I am just the Assistant Executive Director for Nevada State Education Association. And I want you to know that, like other institutions, there are times when school boards do not live up to public expectations. This is true of school districts with elected school boards and those without. The difference is elected school boards provide the public with a direct line of accountability. And let me tell you, my constituents find me in Smith's, and they tell me exactly what they want me to know. Appointed school boards are shielded by an appointing authority who typically have significant other responsibilities in addition to the appointment of the school board. It is extremely rare to see an elected official voted out of office over the actions or conduct of another official they have appointed. This is truer still when the appointment is made by another deliberative body. Democracy can be messy. Money can have a substantial influence on elections, and sometimes campaigns are negative and turn off voters, or you can be harassed and have to move from your home, like I did when I first was elected trustee. Or you could have a typical election like I just experienced for SD 12. Oftentimes, our preferred candidates do not win. In recent years, school boards have become a focal point for a political faction looking to score cheap points with campaigns fueled by disinformation related to critical race theory, masks, vaccines, sex education, even bathrooms. While these challenges are real, they are certainly not enough to abandon our system of democratic governance. Instead, Nevada has implemented reforms over the years to increase voter participation and make elections more democratic. We believe school boards would benefit from greater democracy and participation. I don't see how a commission by the county in appointing a board member when parents already have voted for whom they want to represent them would make a difference. At this point, I'd like to introduce Alexander Marks, who is the Director of Communications for the Nevada State Education Association.
Thank you, Alexander Marks, for the record. While democratically elected school boards do bring the greatest accountability of responsiveness to the communities they serve, we do agree that there should be more done in the face of political attacks, which we've seen here tonight, to increase levels of professionalism and collaboration at school boards while also bringing greater accountability. So we have a list of great things we can do long before we eliminate the democratic process of voting, some of which we've already heard, so I'm not going to go over every one in detail. But first, obviously, allowing educators to serve on their school boards who are excluded. That would add a critical missing perspective to governance, increasing professionalism, and bringing day-to-day experience to the board. The addition of advisory seats could bring more breadth of diversity to perspective to local school boards, including adding important education stakeholders like students and representatives of the PTA, paraprofessionals, et cetera. A statewide code of conduct has been discussed for school board trustees, including a process for possible removal for office transgressions, and that would set a clear expectation with new lines of accountability. Instituting regular rotation of school board presidents would also lead to more collaboration between school board trustees and decrease factionalism on the boards. Possibly limiting the superintendent contracts to 2 years, similar to the bargaining contracts. Time to seating the new school board members after elections would make superintendents more accountable to the seated boards and lead to better working relationships. Compensation, we've already discussed, but compensation of trustees that better reflects responsibility would lead to more qualified and more professional school boards, and candidates rather. Elevating the ballot placement of school board races would also lead to greater participation. It wouldn't be buried at the bottom. Electing school board candidates through ranked choice voting would also reward candidates who are more collaborative. And public financing of school board elections would help level the playing field while also increasing communications between candidate campaigns and the voting public. Just to kind of wrap things up, so between the audience outbursts we've seen tonight, some of the anti-LGBTQ public comments, and a lot of communism references, this is a great example of what most CCSD meetings have been like over the last 2 years. But to suggest that one solution is to point all of you would not solve any of the issues we've seen tonight, and we would also stand in opposition of that proposal as well. This is just a glimpse of what we've been dealing with at the local level. Appointments, again, would not prevent any of those issues, which, honestly is why I think things feel so dysfunctional sometimes. But the suggestions NSEA set forth would far better fix the problems that even the coalition has suggested here this evening. And again, they would be worth trying long before removing the right for our Nevadans to vote for our school board trustees. NSEA stands ready to work with this committee, as always, on any of these important school board reforms, but at the same time, we will fight against any move to make any school boards less democratic and shielding them from accountability. Thank you.